Good morning and welcome to this hopefully wonderful session about a non-existing printing press. who should have thought that we would spend a morning together discussing a machine that does not exist. So maybe I need to give you a little bit of background for that, and hopefully you will find it as interesting as I have found it myself digging into this topic. So before we get started, there's a few things I just want to let you know. You can see on the screen it says join the discussion. You can actually join me live here on English to participate in the discussion, which is super interesting if you're interested. If you are more interested in questions, you can ask questions on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, and I would be able to see them here while the show goes on, and hopefully also be able to answer some of the questions that you may have during this session. Another disclaimer is also that I don't think that we at English or me personally have any answers or all the answers to any of the things about offset presses. There are people that are way more qualified to take it from both a business perspective and also from a technical perspective. But there is a couple of reasons for having this discussion, and we want it to be an open discussion about why this is interesting to talk about, and hopefully it can lead to at least some, let's say, considerations from the OEMs, and also maybe when you are buying your next offset press, maybe help you also identifying some of the things that you should maybe look into when you are investing a lot of money in a machine. So why this let's say session here, live session today? First of all, it's because I started writing an article, then I started doing some interviews, but there's a lot of explanations, and I thought to make it a little bit more condensed, maybe it's easier to have it as a live session. But you will also get an article afterwards, and there are also 3 films that are made specifically about this topic with 3 different printing companies that not 3 different printing companies, 2 different printing companies, and Anthony Thurby as a consultant working out of the UK, but serving printing companies around the globe when it comes to making their printing operations as efficient as possible. So this all started just before Drupa, because Heidelberg announced a new XL106 generation machine that could run 21,000 impressions sheets per hour. And when you hear things like that, it's always like, wow, it's a technical marvel. It's simply amazing to think that it, with the precision everybody knows that is needed in a printing offset printing press, to run that many sheets with the size of a sheet is simply amazing. And that led to some questions, and I come back to that in a second. But it didn't last many, I would say, weeks, because at Drupa, maybe you already saw, but Koenig & Bauer, they then announced a Rapida 106X running 22,000 sheets an hour. And I wouldn't be very surprised if we soon see somebody else coming up with a 23,000 sheets per hour. But it raises a lot of questions. It raises, first of all, the question, do we need these fast machines? And in case we do, what are the consequences of having these machines, of course? That I had a very nice and good conversation with my good friend Anthony Thurby about. I will get into that in a second as well. There will also during this session be played some of the videos that I have done here. So I hope you will just stick with me and see these, because I think they are important to have at least a little bit of foundation for what we are talking about here. But that again also led to me, okay, I said that, okay, I have worked in printing companies for many years, but I still thought that, okay, it could be interesting to make a poll on LinkedIn to figure out, okay, how many of these, how are these machines actually used? And also, would there be an interest in even thinking about a new business model. I will show you the polls also in a second. And then that also led to a conclusion that I came with because Anthony and I, and also some of the people I spoke to, Hans-Jürgen Geis from Druckhaus Bechstein in Germany. It's in German but with English subtitles, so you should still be able to listen to him and understand, because he is a great printing company. And then I also spoke to a guy called Morten Christensen, who is the owner and founder, or not the founder, owner and CEO of a small printing company on a small island in Denmark, a very isolated place. But that also puts things a little bit in a perspective. And that actually, because I asked a simple question to them, so are you using your digital equipment very much for variable data, extreme short runs down to a very few copies, or are you mainly using it for shorter runs that you would normally run in offset? And I spoke to a lot of people, and I think that a lot of people who have invested in digital equipment have not really utilized them as anything but short run machines. I even spoke to a guy from South Africa last week, speaking about, they talked about investing in a new digital press, and that was also for the majority for very short run of magazines. So I think I have a valid point here that a lot of the digital presses in the market are essentially used for short runs and less for variable data, and therefore serves a totally different purpose than, not a different purpose than they were invented for, but a different, let's say, value proposition for the market. And therefore you can ask yourself, has also the offset OEMs simply lost an opportunity? Because maybe they focus too much on fast and maybe less on being really smart and convenient for the smaller printing companies. So I hope you like the agenda, and now it's time to dig into some of the things that I have been raising here in my introduction. So let's start with the polls. No, let's start somewhere else. When you have a printing press that can run 22,000 sheets an hour, I know that none of these machines will ever run 24/7, 365 days a year. But in case they could, and in case that you were able to fill up the machines with that amount of work, we are close to 200 million sheets a year. So the first question is obviously to ask, okay, how many sheets do a printing company actually produce today? And the poll I did is not representative at all. It was only a couple of handful of people that answered the poll, so it is only a very vague, let's say, impression of how many sheets are printed on an offset press. Let's take the poll here so we can see it. That was the wrong one here. Here we go. If you take the one that is below my picture here, you can see I asked a simple question saying that, okay, how many sheets do you typically print per month? And you can see that actually 27% of a very, very low number, I think it was about 15-20 people that answered, so it is not representative at all, but still an indication. 27% less than 1 million. 27% between 1 and 2 million, and from 2 to 5 million, 18%, and more than 5 million sheets per month, 27%. And that is very well aligned, because when Anthony and we spoke about the very fast machines, his first claim was basically, okay, maybe this is only about 1% of the market that can really utilize this speed. And maybe that is not so much commercial printers unless they are into long-run productions, but maybe more into the packaging space, which of course is also an interesting market for both Koenig & Bauer and Heidelberg. So maybe it's not such a big surprise that it has a limited audience if we only look at the capabilities in production volume. But I was still a little bit surprised, because when you see the calculations I've done in a second, running this low numbers requires some kind of, let's say, alternative business plans in business models in order to be able to finance it. And that led to the second poll I did, because I thought that, okay, let's think about a new, you can think of it as a financing model. My claim is it's not just a financing model, it's a paradigm change, because I was thinking instead of introducing faster machines, then let's introduce slower machines with a lower capex, but maybe with the potential of software upgrades to become faster when the needs are there, either dynamically or as an upgrade to the machine if you have a printing company growing. So and here we have, I think it's a little bit more than 100 people that answered, but still not representative, but still a little bit higher number. And I had like 4 different options, because that's a limitation of LinkedIn. So option 1 was 18,000 sheets per hour with very fast setup and prices like they are today. That was like one option. And you can see that 39% voted for that one. The second one is a 10,000 sheets per hour machine with very fast setup and a 25 to 35% lower capex, plus option for scaling speed for peak performance. 20% like that idea. Option 3, 10,000 sheets per hour, very fast setup, 40 to 50% lower capex. 30 to 40% lower capex. And then the last option, 10,000 sheets per hour, very fast setup, 40 to 50% lower capex, plus variable cost per sheet. And that actually gave 31%. And if you look at this, basically the 3 last options are, of course, they are a little bit different in the answers. That was the intention when I asked. But basically, these indicates that slower machines is not a bad idea, and that basically gives you more than 50% of the respondents said that they would like to have a slower machine, and 31% of the total people asked or answered this thing even agreed to have some kind of variable cost included in, let's say, in the calculation of a machine. And that is interesting for many reasons, because I think that one of the things is that when you have a machine that runs very fast, there are some side effects to it. And actually Anthony Thurby came up with some really relevant and interesting points of use. He said that often when you have machines that run very, very fast, they rarely run at 100%, both because the operator needs to take responsibility for having a great output. And remember that if you have a very fast machine that at some point doesn't deliver the output, it is also very fast, and therefore it takes a lot of waste with the number of sheets it can produce before an error can be corrected. That is, of course, something that is important to think of. Then also, when people think about buying a new machine like a 21 or 22K machine, of course you can feel intrigued to have it very fast, because you basically can get things produced faster, and therefore you have a potential capacity of things. But if you have, let's say, a utilization that is pretty high, then you have to think about that you have more pre-press, more sales, more post-press work, and you also have logistics. And therefore it is not just about buying a machine that can output more, it is also about all the, let's say, things surrounding the machine that essentially is needed in order to make sure that you can utilize this speed. Otherwise it doesn't really make sense, right? Then Hans-Jürgen Geis from Druckhaus Beckstein, he also mentioned to me that the machines that run very fast, they also need to spend more energy because of the curing of the substrates. When you print faster, you apply more energy to the drying of the sheets. And those kind of things is sometimes something that people, I wouldn't say they forget about it, but of course it's a very important part of your, let's say, your investment, that you have both an understanding of the sales, the pre-press, the post press and the logistics around the machine. Otherwise, you cannot utilize the speed 100%. I would like you to see the interview I did with Anthony. So sit down, make a cup of coffee, and spend the next couple of minutes watching this, and then we will return in a second to more interesting things to consider before we're talking about the new non-existing offset press. So, Anthony, now we are recording. So now everything we say is on record, right?
Thankfully, what we've always discussed before never is, so that's good.
That's great, yeah. Anthony, as you know, the reason why I wanted to talk to you today was because I have shared an article I wrote with you about the new non-existing offset machine. And the reason was because you and I, a couple of months ago, spoke about Heidelberg's new 21K, and then later Koenig & Bauer also announced the 22K, which I don't think came as a big surprise to either of us. But maybe more of a surprise is how these machines apparently may not fit into a majority of the commercial printers in the world of today. What is your view? Is it speed or versatility that is most important?
Well, I think you've got complete separation in relevant markets and relevant countries, as we discussed before. But I think in those truly optimized industrial print businesses, the 21, 22K machines make perfect sense in terms of keeping their operating cost per sheet at the lowest level they can for the highest throughput. You've then got the labor cost that sits alongside that, and in terms of the labor shortage as well. So that makes sense. However, as I said before, you might be talking a significant amount of the PPV in terms of the region that sits within, but also there's still several hundred or a couple of thousand of print shops sitting beneath that have a completely different requirement. So I think it's about the right product at the right time and in the right strategy about what you're going to do with those relevant clients. I think flexibility and variability is where the sort of, let's call them the SME print shops sit still, because natural causes, they're not going to compete so much in terms of the economic side with the 21, 22K machines. So I think there's a sort of a disparity, relevant nature about where you sit with what. I think for me, I think the relevant people who bring products to market have to be very wary that they could leave a lot of potential customers behind.
And so, as you can see here from the beginning of the interview with Anthony, we are pretty much on the same side that there are things here that are really interesting. So let's dig a little bit into the past, because I remember one of the first time I met it was a sales rep from some of the OEMs. I can't remember which one. It could have been Heidelberg, could have been Komori, could have been anybody. But maybe more than 20 years ago, I met that guy in a printing company in Denmark, and basically visiting a printing company. And his argument was that, okay, if we take these two old machines down and put up a new, faster offset press, then basically the economics would prove that this is a good investment. And remember, 20 years ago, print was dominating mass communication tool. Today, it's first and foremost the internet. And secondly, if you look at the situation today compared to then, today digital and also the demands from customers are really different with shorter runs. Some have variable data, some are even in books of one, but at least these things have changed. So now the question is, do you need to have a faster machine, or do you need to have let's say a more more flexibility in your machines? And I asked Anthony directly, saying that, okay, if you for the same price as one fast machine can get two slower machine, I asked him, what do you think of that? And here is his answer from the same interview. So listen to him here.
So from an output capability, makes perfect sense. I think the reality is the technology is there in certain places already, if it was, let's say, viewed differently from the outside. But then you're talking about the whole sort of pre-production process, where there's an acceleration from the vendors to actually simplify that process and actually understand that process and educate the people to then get to the two platforms. But yes, I think with the very nature of short runs coming down now, we come away from the 21K machines as such as a sort of a top level. The make ready component of a printing job is more important than the printing. So
So that led to one of the other things I was thinking about, and that was like, okay, if you can have a machine that runs slower, it doesn't have to be a different machine, but it could be a software component that essentially deliver a machine that is half the speed of today's marbles. Of course, you can then argue that, okay, you get a machine that you can better handle because an operator can actually manage that easily with, if you have a machine that nominal is 10,000 sheets per hour, maybe in real life it maybe runs closer to between 7 and 8,000 sheets, just like in 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But with our IoT and all the things that you see in the market today, maybe you could have two machines. Maybe one operator could actually handle two machines. So you get that flexibility of operating more jobs, shorter print runs, and the two machines could talk and say that, okay, speed up, speed down a little bit, because in 2 minutes I need a plate change, so I need the operator, so you can just print while we're doing that, and when that plate job has been done, now it starts to speed up, and when it is good sheets, basically now it's time for the other one to slow down and get ready for plate change, and those kind of things, even combined, if you think of the AMRs and the robots that are also being introduced more and more, maybe that is something that could be much more valuable for many printing companies, rather than having one machine that is very fast and maybe a little bit less flexible in that perspective. So of course you sometimes have to think a little bit about those kind of things before investing. And then of course I understand that if any OEMs look at it, they might think that I'm crazy, because how should they be able to sell a machine that at half the price of today, and what should the benefit be for an OEM? And I want to show you something here. I hope it works here. Let's see. I have made a spreadsheet here, and in that spreadsheet here you can see I put in some variables that hopefully can give you a little bit of an insight on the thinking of this, at least. And maybe we should start. And I'm not saying that this is conclusive. I'm not saying that this is that there's, because I have, for example, not taken into account plates, and that is of course something that you would have to take into consideration if you have let's say a real calculation. But this is again as an example. Let's say that you have a machine, and I have an idea, but I don't know exactly how much these machines cost. So I just put in some more or less random numbers, said that, okay, a fully featured machine around 2 million euros, and then with the new business model, there's a 50% discount on it. Now you have a 1 million euro price tag on it, and I don't know how cheap you can get financing today, and I don't know how long time you normally would pay, but you can see that maybe 72 months, 7 years is maybe a good idea about this. And instead of having as a quarterly installments, you have it as monthly installments, and you set a scrap value on the machine. The scrap value is of course here. One of the things that you of course know, and I should have known as well, but it's always a surprise when you start putting things into a spreadsheet, because if you go from monthly installments to quarterly installments, you can see that the monthly financing here on this given parameters is today 18,000 euros a month. But if you go to quarterly, you can see it increases to 25,000 for the cost. That is considerably more expensive. So that is of course something that you have to take into consideration. And then we go a little bit down in the spreadsheet here, because I want to show you something else. So here we say that, okay, we have 10,000 machines. Anthony said to me that typically they run at 75% of the max speed if you look at it from an average, because you have setup time, you have wash time, you have setting up the plates, you have a lot of things that takes the average down. And then basically you say, okay, if you only run with one shift, that is 8 hours production day. And if you say that you on average have, let's say, 20 to 22 working days a month, then you can basically see that, okay, in this calculation I have put in like an average plate total shift changeover in 3 minutes, an average print on of 2,500, and an average number of sheets for setup 13. Then you can basically see that you can do 12, you can do 3,000 sheets, but you can't do that because now you exceed the 8 hours per day. Then you can say that, okay, how much can I go? And on average, 2,700, or for 5 shifts and maybe 5,000, 7,000 sheets. So you can basically, you can play around with this. The spreadsheet is available for download after the session here. So you can basically see how many errors I have done. But the reason why I do this is basically because when you have put in parameters that fits into your business and how many shifts you have and how many hours you operate, then it comes up with an actual number of sheets per month. And that is interesting because you may say that you print 2 million sheets a month, but when you put in the facts on what you can actually achieve with the setup time and with the speed of the press and the number of shifts you have, you may actually be surprised. I got a little bit surprised because that is not a lot of shifts. And you can see that if you have a machine that runs 7,500 sheets per hour and your average print run is 6,500, obviously you can see that that's almost an hour of operational time that you would have during the day, and that is only 5 shifts, right? So there's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration. But the 15,000 sheets here, let's say that the OEM basically doesn't want to give that discount, but want to make it into a variable, a truly variable, not like a subscription model where you're obligated to buy this, because this we're trying to reinvent here, right? And let's say that the first 36 months or 3 years, the print OEM is now dividing the 1 million in discount. He's basically dividing into these number of months here, and basically take the leasing contract, including the, let's say, the price per sheet, which was in this example would be 0.0389 euro cents per sheet. Then you have a price per sheet, including financing, of 0.0643. That's still without the plates. But my claim here is that now we're talking about something that is interesting from the perspective that we are close to probably what some people might pay for a click on a larger format digital press, without knowing how expensive, how cheap it is. I'm just saying that it is interesting from this perspective, because now you have something where the financing cost and the interest rate you pay is considerably less than if you were paying you can see here that if you were paying it with 0% discount on the machine, sorry, that's 100% here, then you can see that your price would be 36,000 euros per month, and if you have 50%, not a big surprise, 18,000. But the 715,000 with this one monthly cost, it is still cheaper for you, and the OEM will still make his money. And then you can of course say that, okay, what happens after the 36 months? Should the OEM continue to have a variable cost? I know there's service agreements and things like that on top of this as well. Or should that be something where let's say the scrap value is decreased in order to make the refinancing of the machine more interesting after the let's say the agreed period of time? Those are the things where the model probably needs to be aligned a little bit more, of course. What I would like to show you now is a little bit, I don't know how to say that. It's basically, I would like to take you to a small island in Denmark. And there's a particular reason for this. First of all, it's a company that is a second generation company that used to be an offset printing company making a newspaper on the island. It's an island with about 4,000 people. And the reason why it's so nice to talk to a company that is so, let's say, relatively isolated is because everything can then be tested in something that is a little bit more isolated than if you go to Germany, that is like a big country. So let's see the film. It is about 4 minutes, and then I will come back to show you some of the things they have done, and also some conclusions that I feel is interesting to talk about. This is Morten from Enkish. Today, Henrik and we took the ferry from a city in Denmark called Kalundborg and took the ferry to a wonderful island called Samsø, which is a relatively small island in between Jutland and Zealand in Denmark. So I'm here with Morten, who is the owner and the CEO, and I would say that you probably do almost everything here, right?
Yeah, I probably do almost everything.
Morten, you took over from your father years ago. Yeah. What type of company are you today?
Today we are all-round printing company and fulfillment company.
Mm. And when you come to an island like this, how many people lives here on the island?
3,800.
So it's a tiny market, but you also export from the island to other parts of Denmark, right?
Yeah, about 90% we export, as we call it.
So no taxes?
No taxes, it's all duty-free.
Fantastic. Morten, one of the reasons why I asked to come to visit you, because you have something that is relatively rare today, the Koenig & Bauer 74 karat, which is a quite amazing machine. Maybe you will explain a little bit, what type of machine is this?
Yeah, it's a direct imaging machine, and it has Anilog's inking system. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the best features of it. It's absolutely the Anilog's inking system.
Mm. And it's a B2 format. So basically you have a machine here with a very small footprint.
Yes.
That process the plates directly in the machine. Takes about 15 minutes, you told me.
Yes.
And then basically you feed the paper and then you get a 4+4 job out in the other end, right?
Yes, that's correct.
It runs about 10,000 sheets an hour, right?
Yes, top speed.
When you look at, because you have two of them.
Yeah.
Why two, and what is the biggest advantage of this machine? Even though it's a relatively old machine, what is the biggest advantage today?
Yeah, it's a relatively cheap machine. You could get them for almost nothing. It's a direct imaging machine. You don't need a CTP device. We like the machine.
And yet, you also have indigo machines, you have latex printers, you have DTF machines. DTG machines, and you have a lot of machines here. So when you're like the jack of all trades and you can produce almost anything, how important is it to have these kind of machines?
It's still important for the big sheet counts and so on. Yeah.
As I told you on Monday, I am going to present a little bit about an idea about having machines that are maybe not the fastest machine in the market, but are very easy to use and very easy to also maybe for the financing part a little bit different from today. If you look at a machine like this, how well does it fit a printing company like yours?
It fits us perfectly. Exactly, this machine is a cheap machine to buy. Yeah, it ticks all the boxes for us.
If you today should buy a new machine, would that be, I know this is not for sales anymore, but if you could get a brand new 74 karat, would that fit very much into what you would like for a machine?
Maybe not the on-press imaging. That's the Achilles heel of this machine.
Is that because of the speed?
That's primarily because of the speed, yes.
So it is about 15 minutes for processing plates inside it, right?
Yes.
And so that is like a downside, because basically you cannot use the machine for anything else while it's processing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the speed of it, a lot of people are talking about 15, 16, 18, 20, 22,000 sheets an hour. Why is that not important?
That's not important for us because it's primarily for small sheet counts. It's not for the big.
And if you look at how you use it here at Samsø Posten, how many sheets do you typically print in an average job?
I think it's typically around 4,000 or 5,000.
So still too many for using it in digital, but still very valuable to do in offset.
Yes, exactly.
We spoke about that you have, let's say, machines here, two machines. You also have a smaller machine from Presstech, also similar kind of technology. You are a guy that can manage a lot of things yourself. How important is that when you have an old machine?
That's very, very important because König and Bauer is not supporting these machines anymore, and there's only one guy in Europe that can manage the imaging system on these machines. So knowledge is key with these kinds of machines.
And if you again look at it in relation to, I mean, you got them relatively cheap. You found them in the market, which was like a little bit rare. What did it replace?
It replaced an old man Roland 204.
And when you compare those two machines to each other, what was the biggest advantage?
The biggest advantage was that everything is automatic on this machine, and you can easily get up to color here.
You told me that you were at Drupa and you spent some time with Heidelberg because of the Anicolor machine that they had on the booth. Why is this Anicolor and dry offset interesting in your opinion?
It's the same technology as this machine, so it's very interesting that you only need 4 or 5 sheets, then you're up to color.
So it is again fast setup time, very high quality, and very little waste. That is like the what you consider as being very important for a company like yours?
Absolutely.
See, these machines are old, really old. I can't remember. I think it was probably 20 years ago, 24 years, 25 years ago. They were presented by König and Bauer. And when I spoke to Morten from Samsø, the island in Denmark, it was quite interesting because the specifications on these 74 karat machines are very similar to what I'm talking about here. Something that is very easy to operate, very good and high and consistent quality, low waste, everything like this. And it's not because I'm endorsing that we should reinvent the past, but I'm just saying that maybe it is time to also sometimes think a little bit about what the measures are. One of the things that has become something that is important to when I talk to people, and I did that as late as yesterday in a LinkedIn group or LinkedIn post I did, and that is that a lot of people are saying that commercial print is dying, and depending on what measures you have, you can always say that is, of course, there are fewer printing companies. You can say that the paper volume is decreasing. You can say that the number of employees working in the printing industry is decreasing. So you cannot argue saying that it is the same industry as it was 20 years ago. That is of course a fact. But I couldn't help think about, because in '92 I was a publisher of a music magazine. It was printed in offset. I think it was around 4,500 copies. It was 32 and 48 pages, varying, and that was printed only in black. And then it was a stitch product, and I think it had a colored cover, something like that. And at that time, we paid considerably more for that type of product than if you look at most printing companies' prices today. So when you look into the value and let's say the pricing and the size of the printing industry, even if you look at it from a financial perspective, the decrease may also be because we have lowered our prices, because technology has given us a lot of advantages in setup time, in price. And sometimes we forget that if you lower, let's say, the sales price of an industry, then basically it also looks like a declining industry, which does not really measure rightly. Another thing is, of course, that you have products that are totally gone out of business, and I found this one as an example, the good old IKEA catalog, and you can see that I have my motion blur on, so I can't. Well, okay, here should just be in front of my face. So the IKEA catalog doesn't exist anymore. Another thing that doesn't exist anymore is the yellow pages, or the phone book. And then you can wonder, why does it say here 24? Oh, that's difficult, right? 24. That's because it's a brand new telephone book. It's printed on the island from Morten just before. And you can think, okay, that is impossible. A few things and a few comments when you have these kind of saying. Remember, in the good old times, And I'm not normally just saying that the good old times for that matter, but in the good old times, a phone book and a local newspaper were typically invented and operated around a printing company. A printing company needed work, so they developed products that they could print and sell and make a living of. Then in the 80s and the 90s, these operations like phone books and yellow pages were sold off to companies that were focused on doing phone books and those type of applications. And now the printing company became, say, a commodity, just printing them instead of having the value of owning them, right? And then you can say that, okay, that has, that is a fact that the world is changing into that printing companies are not operating as a publisher as many printing companies did in the past. But with the Samsø-Posten, the island that we went to visit, they have developed this one. So it's not just a directory service as we normally know from these type of books. They now call it the gossip book. So they have not just the phone numbers, but they have also the valuation of all the houses on the island. So when people are talking about each other, they can just look it up in the phone book and see how valuable is your house. They have a lot of other things in it. And of course you can say that when you live in a small community, maybe the phone book is more important than if you live in a large city. But my point, and the reason why I wanted to show you this, is just because this is an example that when we talk about commercial print and we talk about that we are decreasing our business, it's also because we are afraid of taking the investments our forefathers did. Our forefathers, when they didn't have work, they may have complained as much as we do, but they did something. They published a newspaper. They published a yellow pages or phone book. They probably published a lot of other things where they were actually curating the content themselves. And today it's even difficult to find printing companies that do their own marketing in print. And it's difficult for us to go out and say to the market that you should use print if you don't even do print yourself in order to market your services. So that is like one measure. But another thing that is more important, and that is something that is, in my opinion, very important to understand when we talk about commercial print, and that is when the analysts and labor unions and some consultants talk about the industry, they look at it as how many printing units are sold, or how many web offset printing companies have closed, or how many people works in the industry, and how much paper is being sold. I remember when I started in the industry more than 20 years ago that one of the biggest examples of troubles we spoke about at that time was the overcapacity in the market. In a market with overcapacity, price is often the most important parameter when you sell. Because if supply and demand is not aligned, basically price is probably the easiest parameter to change things. So with fewer printing companies, my claim is that now we have a market that is way more aligned with the past, with the demand. And secondly, and that is maybe even more important, with the changes in the market, I think that a lot of commercial printing companies today are not in a bad shape. I can see that the printing companies that we visit, that they have, of course they want to make more money, but they are still in a much better shape than probably they were like 15, 20 years ago. And you see a lot of people really interested also in investing in new technology in order to, continue a growth, and even also in some of the areas that you think of. So when we judge commercial print, we have to look into the value creation that they do. And I want to show you a little snippet. It's only 2.5 minutes, but it is a very interesting snippet from the Swedish Federation. The former CEO or president of the Federation initiated a question some years ago, in 16, about who makes money in the industry. And it's a very good film that you should see, but I have taken out a snippet about the purpose of doing this. So it's in English, so don't worry. So just take a look at it, and then we talk about it in a second, why I think this is important.
It was really about looking at the value chain in the graphic industry in order to see who is over a longer period of time. We looked at some close to 2,000 companies, how they have performed over the last 7 years. And this was in order to see who in the value chain makes money and who is not making money. There's a lot of opinions about how the graphic industry is doing compared to other businesses and so on, and we wanted to have a fact-based survey in view to see how is it really going, how are we actually performing versus other areas in the industry. Of course, we were heavily involved ourselves, since we basically know all companies, so we could both select and deselect what companies should be part of this service. But of course we used also an external consultant, a company called Bisnode, that are specializing in analyzing a huge amount of data, because this was a huge undertaking.
We met Grafiska Företagen some time ago. They have an interest in understanding the structural changes in the graphical industry. We have all the data and the knowledge to actually analyze that. So their needs is very much what we can deliver. So we started a project to see what is happening in the graphical industry in Sweden.
Having a fact-based survey, that was one, but obviously also in order to help companies in their strategic thinking, and also have this as an input for the individual company's own strategy. Bisnode has developed a method, a model called the simpler model, and that allows you to compare the efficiency of a company, whether they are big or small. It doesn't matter, because the model as such takes that into account, so you get an even comparison.
Basically, our method is measuring not only the growth and development of the industry, we also measure the competitiveness. And we base all of this on the added value in the company. And we work very closely with the Grafiska Företagen to actually define the industry. They know their business, we know the facts and figures, so they can help us define the business. They know how the business works, and our knowledge combined gives a very, very good result. When we look at competitiveness, the method we use is called Simpler, and we base that on the cost of making your added value in your industry. So basically, if you make your added value at the same cost as the business in total in the country, you are competitive as the countries. If you have a lower cost to make your added value, you are more competitive. We use this and look at different segments of the graphical industry, which has been very interesting, because when you take added value instead of turnover, you can actually add a value chain without doubling up. Turnover will always increase, whereas the added value is unique for each part in the value chain. If you look at the added value and the cost to create added value, we do the labor cost, we also do the marketing cost of capital when we look at the cost to create your value. It doesn't matter if you're a small company, a big company, if you are a refinery with a lot of capital, or if you're a consultancy company with most people in. You can compare all of these, and you compare them to sort of the average for all businesses in Sweden.
So when Grafiska Företagen in Sweden did this one, I had really hoped that this was like an ongoing survey that was also taken up by Intergraph, so it could have been like something that could have been done on European level. Because I think that what we need in order to make sure that we can actually make the right decisions, we need to have the right background data for doing what we are doing. And one of the things that is quite interesting, I have not taken that into this session here, but Ravinder Paradisnas, the former CEO or president of Grafiska Företagen, the year after, made a follow-up where they were thinking about, okay, what is the difference between the companies that are very successful and the companies that are less successful? And as they stated, the paper prices were almost the same. the equipment was almost the same, the labor force is almost the same. So it comes down to that the management and how the management is able to foresee the future is maybe the most important differentiator when we talk about success or not success. And that is something that I think is truly important and very relevant to discuss also when we talk about the new offset press. I asked Thurby, and you can see that in the full interview if you're interested, if he believes that the OEMs on the offset side today are very good at listening to the market. And unfortunately, his saying is that no, it's a often engineer-driven company, so they are more like what can we do from a technical perspective rather than from the need of the market. And that leads me to the last of the things that I was interested in uncovering with the potential of a new printing press, an offset press. And I hope you got my points here. It's sometimes not so easy always to get, you have an idea in your head, how do you express that in a way that makes sense for other people. But as an example of where I think it's important to have a, let's say, a leadership that has an understanding and listening to the market, is because if we are right, when I spoke to Anthony and also to Hans Jürgen Geis and also Morten Christensen from these companies that we have been involved in this session here, that digital is used more for short runs than for variable data. Then you can talk about whether the printing industry from the OEM side and the offset industry has lost an opportunity. Since the, let's say, the CDI 52 and I was just about to see the GTOs, but from that generation of machines and forward, maybe the OEMs have been focusing more on speed and size rather than on, let's say, the diversity of having fast setups machines, and maybe there's also technical reasons for that. But basically, the digital OEMs like HP, Canon, Ricoh, Konica, Minolta, Xerox, and others have taken that hotspot. Just remember back in 2016 at Drupa, where Benny Lander drew his, like, here we have toner-based, here we have offset, and in the middle there was a big gap for nanography. I think that his identification was spot on. Unfortunately, for Lander, they couldn't deliver it on time, and I think the market has changed entirely now because of inkjet that is now surely and maybe a little bit too slow, still moving in. I think we are live again here. Well, technology wonders, right? No, I think that maybe it's an opportunity to think, because the spreadsheet that I shared with you was an example of that a very expensive machine can be very difficult to finance in a one shift operation, and a lot of the companies that we have been visiting over the years operates only in one shift. And therefore, you simply have to rethink both what is needed. Do we really need the very, very fast machines? Do we really need to have maybe the format of the machines? I'm always questioning a little bit why we need to have something of a big format when it forces us to do more finishing instead of having something that is smaller and simpler to process. But that's another discussion about the future of the thing. The most important thing is always listen to the demands in the market and develop the technology accordingly. And I'm not bashing anybody in this session here. I'm just saying that should be evident for everybody. Why are we, when you look at the, let's say, on the finishing side, we are having more and more automated finishing equipment, but maybe there's a whole market for less automated and cheaper equipment. And if we can't deliver it from, let's say, genuine high quality suppliers in the Western hemisphere, we basically force people to go to India and to China to buy that equipment. And I'm just thinking that it's important that we listen to the market, that we develop the technologies that are needed, and that we understand what kind of challenges some of these printing companies have. And I'm again not saying that that what I'm saying is the right solution. I hope that this will open up for a debate and discussion about, let's say, the next iteration of offset printing presses, because I mean, you saw Morten. He has two 74 karat 24-year-old machines, and both of them deliver value to a small printing company with a slower speed compared to what you can get today, but a way faster setup, much less waste when you set up the machines. As an example, if you take my spreadsheet and say that, okay, if you can have a lower capex and have a variable cost, it can actually become very, very valuable for both the print OEM and for the PSP. And I think that is maybe the most important thing, is to figure out how can we develop technology, how can we keep developing things that ensure the future of our wonderful industry. And the last thing I just want to show you before I close today's show is let's take a little bit look on Druckhaus Bechstein from Germany. And as I said, it's in German but with subtitles. Hans-Jürgen Geis is the manager of a company where the offset press, they make money on the offset press, but it is a company that do other things to make money as well. But let's listen to him for a second here. So, Hans-Jürgen Geis, ich habe dir getroffen, wenn wir einen Film von König und Bauer gemacht haben, und es war sehr toll, mit dir zu sprechen. So, willkommen hier am Enkisch.
Dankeschön für die Einladung.
Ich habe dir gefragt über diesen kleinen Interview, weil ich erinnere von unserer Treff, dass deine Druckerei ist vielleicht ein bisschen ungewöhnlich, weil sie haben eine fantastische Druckerei mit eine fantastische Druckmaschine, und sie produziert fantastische Produkte. Aber die meisten Geld, das sie verdienen, ist nicht nur von Druck, ja?
Nein, das ist ein Full-Service-Paket für unsere Kunden, bestehend aus dem Druck, ja, für High Performance, auch digitale Dienstleistungen, Webshop-Dienstleistungen und auch, ich denke, ein großer Anteil ist Lagerung der Drucksachen und Versand, Konfektionierung. Da würde ich sagen, vom Gefühl her, dass wir 2/3 unser Geld zwar mit der Offset-Maschine verdienen, aber trotzdem auch 1/3 mit den weiteren Dienstleistungen.
Euer Name ist Druckhaus Bechstein, und ich habe gedacht, ist Druckhaus, ist das etwas, das du auch siehst als eine Part von der Name in die Zukunft?
Ja, wir haben in der Tat auch über unseren Namen neu nachgedacht. Also ja, wir sind auch Verlag für Zeitschriften, also in diesem Fall IHK, Industrie- und Handelskammerzeitschrift. Aber wir haben uns trotzdem auch entschieden, den Namen Druckhaus weiter beizubehalten, nicht nur Druckerei, sondern als Symbol auch für das Dach, für all diese Dienstleistungen. Also es ist, das Haus soll in diesem Fall die Druckerei, aber auch den Versand und die Buchbinderei und alles mit einschließen. Also daher dachten wir, dass der Name Druckhaus Bechstein auch für die Zukunft stehen sollte.
Fantastisch, ich mag das. Das ist gut. So the full interview is available on Enkish just after, shortly after this session closes in just a few moments. And what Hans-Jürgen is talking about here is that they are a full service provider. Like in the 80s and the 90s, a lot of printing companies were full service providers. And I'm not again saying that we should go back to those good old days. I'm just saying that we all need to rethink what is commercial print. How can we create value for our customers? how can the OEMs develop machines and technology that is better suited for the new realities? And it sounds like I am one that tries to tell people what to do. I'm not. I hope this will be a genuine discussion, and I hope this will be as interesting as I think it has been, talking to people about it, writing an article that also will be on English News in very shortly from now. And I hope you have enjoyed this little 1 hour session here. And well, thank you very much for participating. And maybe I need to just say one more thing, just to make it very clear. The non-existing offset press is an existing offset press that is digital limited to offer a lower price to you guys, but with a variable cost that enables the OEM to utilize the machine on, let's say, peak performance levels where they charge more for it, and at the same time have a variable cost that basically makes the financing of the machine a little bit different. Create some interconnection between machines so it can be operated by fewer operators at the same time. Maybe you already have that, I don't know it. And the new machine, or the machine of the future, is first and foremost a machine that is adapted to reality in offset, where fast setup time is more important than fast run speed. So still doing that as part of the development and the R&D is the, let's see, that's the only thing that is new. Well, enjoy your day and your summer, and see you soon, and thank you for this time.